telling Crystal earlier, when you go to a nursing home, and we start singing that song, and it's amazing. It's amazing when you see the faces with a smile.
Do you have Countrymen on?
Do I have one?
Your walkie.
Sounds like it's one. Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't getting anything earlier.
Oh, I'm sorry. But you know, the simple truth that Jesus loves me. Really, it's an awesome truth. But like I said, you go into a place where that has tied somebody back to something very precious. And would you say, Crystal, it's a going home song? It's like
a home, it feels like home. I
it
think.
feels like home.
Yeah.
It feels like this is where I belong. And quite honestly, that's where we stay. You know, we stay in a place that we know that Jesus loves us. So, we are going to summarize. We're going to come down to the end of it, and this is what's going to happen. We'll either be out here at 4 o'clock, or this will be very extremely rapid. But, you know, we've gone through Joseph's life, and we've come to this point where actually we now find Jacob and his sons sitting back home, and the food is running out. And now the famine was severe in chapter 43. And it came about when they had finished eating the grain which they had brought from Egypt, that their father said, "Go back and buy us a little food. Go back and buy us a little food." Things were rough. Judah spoke up. And he said, "The man solemnly warned us, you shall not see my face unless your brother is with you." The man. I kind of was struck by that. That, you know, when they were, the man said, "We can't come back unless." Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? But he warned us. He said, "You won't see my face. If you send our brother with us, we'll go down and buy you food." Then Israel said, and I kind of looked at, he changed his position here. He went from Judah to Israel. You know, he stepped up and said, "Whoa, wait a minute. Why did you treat me so badly by telling this man whether you had another brother?" The man questioned us, particularly about our relatives. "Is your father alive? Have you another brother?" So we answered his questions. Could we possibly know that he would say, "Bring us your brother"? Now, Judah steps up. "Send the lad with me, and we will rise and go, and that we may live and not die, as well as you and our little ones. I myself will be a surety for him. You may hold me responsible for him. If I do not bring him back to you and set him before you, let me bear the blame before you forever." I was struck by something. Down the line, somewhere in the future for Judah, one of his descendants basically would stand before his father and say the same thing. That Jesus would stand before the Father and say, "I will be a surety. I will take the blame." It just struck with it. You know, God gives us these things that we see. Judah didn't even know that that was coming down the line. But he stepped up and spoke something that traveled generations ahead of him. "Surely I will take the blame forever. I will stand in their place. Hold me responsible." Their father said, "If it must be so, then do this. Take the best products of the land in your bags, carry down to the man as a present a little balm, a little honey, aromatic gum, myrrh, pistachio nuts, and almonds." Now, I don't know what the pistachio nuts were all about, or the almonds, but it struck me as the brothers would be smelling some of the same stuff that Joseph had to smell on his way back to before he took him down. That little balm, little myrrh, that was what they were carrying when they picked him up the first time. So they went down, they took the money, and they took double the money. They took more than enough to buy that little food. So, we have Judah stepping up and saying, the man. The man. Well, take a little of this, take a little of that, go down and get some food for us. So, they get down there. Things are still confusing for these guys. The light hasn't dawned on them yet. They show up, and in verse 16, Joseph saw Benjamin, and he said to his house steward, bring the men into the house, slay an animal, make ready for the men who are to dine with me at noon. So the man did as Joseph said. So, okay, he's going to feed them. Now, they were afraid, because they were brought into Joseph's house, and they said, is it because of the money that was returned in our sacks the first time we were brought in, that he may seek an occasion against us to fall upon us and to take us for slaves with our donkeys? I kind of got sidetracked a little bit on the donkeys. He wants to make us slaves and our donkeys. Sometimes in situations we get sidetracked and we start thinking more about things. And we start saying, what's it going to cost us? And they were confused. And they came near and they spoke. They said to the steward of the house, oh my Lord, we indeed came down the first time to buy food. And it came about, and they went on to say, it wasn't our fault. Somebody did this. We didn't purposely take the money back. And then the steward said this. Verse 23. Be at ease. Do not be afraid. Your God and the God of your father has given you treasure in your sacks. The steward said to them, who's in control? Who's watching out over you? Your God and the God of your fathers. He's the one who did this. So the man brought the men into Joseph's house, gave them water, washed their feet, gave their donkeys fodder, so they prepared the present for Joseph's coming at noon, for they had heard that they were to eat a meal there. And when Joseph came into the house, they brought to him presents which they had in their hands and bowed to the ground to him, and he asked about their welfare. Is your old father well, of whom you spoke? Is he still alive? Your servant, our father, is well. He's still alive. They bowed down in homage. As he lifted up his eyes, he saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, and said, is this your youngest brother, of whom you spoke to me? And he said, may God be gracious to you, my son. And Joseph hurried out, for he was deeply stirred over the sight of his brother. He sought a place to weep. He entered his chambers and wept there. And he washed his face and came out. He controlled himself and said, serve the meal. So they came in. Down in verse 33. And now they were seated before him, the firstborn according to his birthright, and the youngest according to his. They sat there and they go, whoa, what is this? Did anybody tell him our ages? Did anybody tell him how we ranked? Something is going on here. Yes. These guys were freaking out. They probably started worrying about their donkeys again. You know, this is a trap. He took portions from his own table, but Benjamin's portion was 5 times as much as any of theirs. But something was going on, and so they said, okay, we're going to eat. They were concerned that, okay, we might as well make the best of the situation. So the story continues into 44. And they're loading up, and Joseph said, put my cup, the silver cup, in the mouth of the sack of the youngest, and his money for the grain. And they did as Joseph had told them. And as soon as it was light, the men were sent away, and they went. And just as they were going out of the city, and they were not far off, and Joseph said to his house steward, up, follow the men. When you overtake them, say to them, you have repaid evil for good. Is not this the one from which my Lord drinks, which he indeed uses for divination? You have done wrong in doing this. So he overtook them and spoke these words. They're still confused. They don't know what this is all about. Why does my Lord speak such words as these? Far be it from your servants to do such a thing. These are the same guys who sold Joseph. You know, they're going through all of this stuff. What is this about? Set us in order. Now this. Well, behold, the money was there. Whoever, verse 9, whomever your servant is found, let him die. That's what, here again. Yeah, we didn't do this. If you find it, kill it. Kill that guy. So they hurried each man, lowered his sack to the ground. He opened up his sack. They were searching, beginning with the oldest and ending with the youngest. And the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. They tore their clothes and they returned to the city. So all this is going on. It hasn't dawned on them yet. They're still confused. They're still fighting within inside. They're probably still saying, see, this is all coming back to haunt us. It's all coming back. We don't know what this guy's all about, but something is going on. They get back. They denied it. And then Judas spoke up again and interceded. What can we do? How many times do we strive? What can we do? We don't have a clue what's going on here. We didn't put the money back. We didn't take it. We didn't take the cup. What is going on? I don't know. All I know is that our dad said, come, go down there and buy a little food. We said, we can't go down. That's our youngest brother is with us. We can't see the man's face unless our youngest brother is with us. We can't go there. Now we're here. Now we're back in the same spot. And this whole thing is building. This whole thing is building. And then it comes to 45, where it says, then Joseph could not control himself before all those who stood by. I do think that Joseph, through this whole thing, was struggling. What do I do with these guys? I do believe that he was thinking, I got him. I've got Benjamin. I know he's good there, but, I don't know. I think he was still struggling. We struggle with the things that God places in our lives, and we just get to a place that I'm out of control. This is where Joseph was. He could not control himself. There are times when I get to that point. I am not in control of this. What do I do now? Have everyone go out for me, so there's no man with him. And then Joseph made himself known to his brothers. And then Joseph wept so loudly that the Egyptians heard it. And the household of Pharaoh heard it. And he said to his brothers, I am Joseph. Is my father still alive? But his brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed at his presence. Then Joseph said to his brothers, please come closer to me. And they came closer. And he said, I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold into Egypt. Now, verse 5, do not be grieved or angry with yourselves because you sold me here. For God sent me before you to preserve life. You thought one thing, God thought another. And over the last, how many years? How long has he been here? He's been here a long time. He has become a father. He's become a ruler. And all this time, God is working on him. And he says, God sent me before you to preserve life. Because this famine in the land, these 2 years, there's still 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvesting. God sent me before you to preserve for you a remnant in the earth and to keep you alive by a great deliverance. God didn't just send me here to preserve life here. God didn't send me here just to help Pharaoh. God sent me here. You didn't do it. God sent me here to preserve a remnant, your life. God brought me here. Now therefore, in verse 8, it was not you who sent me here. Guys, come on, just settle down. I know this is hard. I know this is causing you a lot of conflict, but let's get over it. All of us. Let's get over this. God sent me here. Do you believe wherever you're at, God has sent you where you're at? Do you believe that there are people who think they are in control of your life? Do you think that there are people who think they're the ones who make the decisions for you? God has sent you to where you're at. Why? I believe it's the same thing. To preserve life. God has given us life through Christ, and that so abundant, so much more than we could ask or think. Why did he do this? So that we could, in turn, minister life to people around us. That's what Joseph is telling his brothers. He has made me a father to Pharaoh, the Lord of all his household, the ruler of all the land of Egypt. Now, hurry. Go tell your father that Joseph is alive. You know, when we look at, we grab a hold of things, when we think we have the answers, and then we see what God is doing as he reveals himself. Through all of these steps in Joseph's life, God is revealing himself more and more and more. And I do believe that at this particular place, when he could control himself no longer, I know that God has done this. I'm not in control. I can play with money and sacks, and I can play with cups, and I can do this, and I can do this, but you know what? God is God. And he brought me here. And he looked at his brothers probably totally different. They were not the guys who sold him into slavery. They were part of God's plan to get him to a place that he could preserve life. Not that he could take the credit, but he could say to them, it was not you, but God. You didn't send me here. God sent me here. You know, as he was looking at his brothers, I do believe he was seeing his story just flashing. I think he replayed that whole thing. You know, did you notice he didn't say, and guys, remember the dream? Remember how you bowed down to me? We just saw that, guys. You just did that. He didn't bring it up. that particular part was not important to him anymore. It wasn't that, look at me, you've bowed down. See, I was right, you were wrong. No. It was God has brought me to this place at this time to preserve life. We're not at war with one another. We are part of God's plan. We see,
This story kind of reminds me of how I should treat
we'll get this just in case Jim wants to throw something at me. I think he's still.
It reminds me of how I should treat my enemies. And, I keep thinking most men would say it would have been perfectly fair for him to take all his brothers and suddenly make them his slaves. I don't blame him. Look what his brother's done to him. But, I think we should treat our enemies, pray for them, and still treat them with kindness. He's still got the same effect. The torment was there. I mean, he tormented the bits out of him, and so he still got the same effect with love and kindness. And then God, did what He knew was the plan from the beginning, there at the end. But it was a good story to tell me how I should, especially my loved ones. I'm sure there's lots of people's families that turn on each other all the time, especially when a parent dies. And that's a good way to think about how to handle my enemies when they've attacked me. It's a good revenge. Fill them with kindness.
But yeah, I mean, okay, let's give Joseph, okay, he was good. Let's say he was just teasing his brothers. But he had no ill design. But it's kind of one of those things, you stop and think about it. He was here in a place that he could have. Some of us would say he should have. I mean, come on, we live in a world that getting even is acceptable. We all feel we have a right to get even. Actually, to profit from all of that. Something was transpiring in Joseph's heart, and he saw this. Wow. Who would have thought that God would do all of this? Because remember,
I have a comment if you,
Oh,
you're at a
well.
breaking point.
okay, we can.
So as we're reading through this, I was just looking at Joseph's name, because in Hebrew, names usually have meaning.
Yeah.
And the name Joseph comes from the Hebrew Yasaf, which is he will cause to add or increase. And just looking at what God did in Joseph's life, I think that's pretty cool. And back in chapter 41, when Pharaoh makes Joseph in charge, he gives him that new name. But we never see that again in the story. The name there meant that the God speaks and he lives, which was true in that situation. But then we keep seeing, the name Joseph used, meaning he will cause to increase, because that's what God is doing through this whole story.
And it's kind of one of those things that God will cause. God will bring it to pass. Pharaoh may have acknowledged it when he gave him a new name, but God is the one who does the work. We look at this story, we look at this account, and we say, how do I apply this to myself? How do I make this not just a Bible story? Because we walk through the same kind of things. We have people that we deal with that they don't treat us fairly. And then God puts us in a place and he says, I want you to do something for me. I want you to step out of your comfort zone.
when you ask, how do we apply it to ourselves? I think anytime we make plans in our life, or someone else does, maybe our parents or even our friends, they say, oh, I see this in you, you're gonna do that, you're gonna do this. But yet, our life takes a different route. That's because of God, just like this. Joseph probably thought, I'll live, be my father's favorite the rest of my life, and I'm, on top of the brothers, and, he's wearing his favorite coat. And yet God stripped all that and then sent him a different path. So I think that when we have plans, and our plans take a diversion, it's because God is going to use us and come through us for his purposes. So I think to answer your question, how can we apply that? If we look back on our lives and think, here's what I thought I was going to do, here's where I thought I would go, but our lives took a different route, it's because God decided to use us. And in a way, that's very comforting, because this morning I heard preaching about hearing God, and one of the points was, if you're not hearing God, are you really his child? Maybe you have to go back to the very beginning and say, am I even, with God? So when he takes our lives and diverts them and uses us, that's just a confirmation that we know we are God's. I mean, he can do that with people that aren't, but that I felt like, even though the plans I had have not come to pass the way I thought, I'm comforted knowing that, well, God is using me, just like here with Joseph.
Yeah. And it is one of those things that, I don't know where it's going to go, but this last week I connected with a guy who I haven't seen for probably, well, if I tell you how many years, you'll say, man, I don't remember that year. But it's like we bumped into each other, and it was like, I'm sitting there, and he's looking at me, and I said, okay, give us a few minutes, and then I will tell you where you remember me from. And it was like, wow, after I told him, because I made him sit there for a while, and we talked about other things, and you could see he's like, and when I told him, he said, really? And things started coming back. And he said, we've got to sit down and talk about how God has brought us to this place and what's happened in between. Because both of us at that point had plans. We knew exactly where we were going to be. You know it. I knew exactly where I was going to be. You know who I am? I'm exactly not there. And that's the way God is. And I can say this from my perspective. When I look and see what God has done, and I say, oh, when I was there, I didn't see God doing this. I was upset. But it did something, it changed direction. And I'm sure that in Joseph's case, he's sitting there looking at Benjamin, he's looking at his brothers, he's talking about how's Dad? He's still alive? Go back and get him, because there's still famine coming. We're not out of this. And he got them all set. He said, you're going to go back? You're going to bring him back? Pharaoh was excited. Well, none of them know this particular Pharaoh. Okay, but it's kind of one of those things. When we allow God to move in our lives and we respond to God the way he should, we'll call Pharaoh worldly. We'll call Pharaoh outside of the kingdom. Those who are worldly, those who are outside of the kingdom, will see. And they'll get excited too. You've experienced that, where God has blessed you, and people around you who don't really give God credit for anything get all excited about your blessing. And you have an opportunity to tell them where the blessing comes from. I didn't earn this. God gave it to me. not a product of this particular thing. God did this in my life.
Amen.
And because of that, this blessing came.
Amen.
And not only, well, you got here again, Joseph looking back and say, God brought me here to preserve life. He couldn't see that from the 17-year-old bound heading for Egypt. None of us know. None of us can anticipate fully what God is going to do. We can take encouragement from these accounts that God has got so much more. And as we walk through our lives, and as we allow God to move, and we recognize who God is and what He is doing in our lives, and we proclaim who God is to the world, sooner or later, somebody in the world's going to go, wow,
Amen.
it's going to happen.
Amen.
We should not be timid in sharing, no, it was God.
Amen.
Because the world needs to know.
Amen.
And so when Joseph stood here, his whole life was now basically turned upside down because for the first time, when he hugged his brothers and they cried on each other's shoulders, and he was sending them back to bring his father there, God did this. Without this, where would my family be? Without this, where would I be? Without this, where would Egypt be? And all the people of the earth who came because of the famine. Sometimes we think, I'm not Joseph. I'm not going to work on that level. How many people is your minimum? Why would I want to minister to so many people? I mean, I've got to have, I've got a quota. How many people will you allow God to work through you to minister? We were talking about different things that we go through, and my daughter and my wife and I, and we were talking about how rules change, and how philosophies change, but they come along and they say, okay, this program. Defibrillators is one of those things you see hanging in a school, see hanging all over the place. And I sat in a training session with some firemen, and you know what they told me? These things are not that effective. These things, but if it saves one, it's worth it. That's the way we should walk with our God. Father, we're not looking at how big, how great I can be. It's not important that all these people bow down and recognize my worth. But if I can save, no, I can't save them, Lord. You can save them. Because that's the other thing we have to get off. It's not me, it's Christ in me. That's the hope. So Joseph was there. And another thing that I thought was kind of interesting, when we get down into chapter 45 and verse 24, so he sent his brothers away, and as they departed, he said to them, do not quarrel on the journey. I just thought that was interesting. Guys, you're going to get out on the road, and you're going to start throwing things at each other. You're going to start blaming each other. You're going to start dragging up old stuff. Don't do that anymore. Do not quarrel with one another. I just thought that was interesting. Don't quarrel, guys. You're going home. Don't quarrel. Enjoy the trip.
Amen.
Because actually, they went back in first class. I mean, they were given things to go back that was like, okay, we're gonna make this easier on you. We're gonna supply you with things that's gonna be what makes it easier for you to get back here. So, they went down. And their father came out. When they saw him, Dad, you're not gonna believe this. You will not believe who the man is. And I wonder if they said that. The man. Joseph is the man. And Jacob said, what? And then they were able to tell their father all of this stuff. It had to be a really interesting conversation. There was probably, no. Yes. No. Yes. There had to be all of those things. And so, Jacob arose, he gets on his wagon, and he goes back to Egypt with them. You know, and as we look at what's going on, and here again, we're familiar with this story, because they go back to Egypt, and Pharaoh has promised them the good land. Why would Pharaoh give them the good land? Because of Joseph. Because of God in Joseph. I mean, maybe it was the fear of God. I can't mess with this guy. He's got a connection somewhere. But
Thank you.
they come back, and Pharaoh says, let them have good. We're not much for pasturing. We're not much for keeping sheep. You know, we got other things that we like to do. Well, what were Jacob and his family? He provided the place that would prosper them, that would benefit them, that would bless them. So Joseph came down. Now, I am not going to go through all the genealogy. Verse 8 and on, it talks about, you know, all the family members. But it gets down to the place that it says, verse 26, and all the persons belonging to Jacob who came to Egypt, his direct descendants, not including the wives of Jacob's sons, were 66 persons in all. And the sons of Joseph who were born to him in Egypt were 2. And all the persons in the house of Jacob who came to Egypt were 7. God preserved a remnant. God brought them down, and he planted these seeds in Goshen. And these seeds would produce a nation. So, when we think of all the things that Joseph went through, we need to remember who went through them with him. And that the purpose was to preserve. The purpose was to glorify God. So the challenge to us is, as I walk, I need to allow God to fulfill his purpose in me. No matter what it looks like. I may not understand it now, which is why I need to hold on to him so much tighter. No, it's not. Because
Can be the best.
but in Joseph's case, you know, you stop and think about it. The best thing that could happen to Joseph was to be sold into slavery, taken to Potiphar, thrown into prison, brought before Pharaoh, and allowed to be used of God to preserve. Above what we could ask or think. I mean, isn't that the way God works?
Amen. Amen.
Far greater than our limited expectations. Yes. And so, here's the challenge as we move forward. Expect God to move forward with you.
Amen. Thank you, Jesus.
Expect God to be in the darkest place,
Amen.
in the brightest place.
Amen.
Expect God to provide the answers.
Hallelujah.
How do I get out of this? Well, stop and think about it, and God will reveal. Use the blessings of today to take you through the hard times. And that's the way we should live. Because God will bless us in order to show himself to us, so that when we hit those times, that we will remember that God is with us.
Amen.
And if he is with us, who can be against us?
Amen. Thank you, Jesus.
Yes. So, we need to challenge ourselves. Now, we're going to move on from Joseph, and I'm going to do a little stutter next week. I'm going to do something a little different next week, because God's been saying something to me this week, and I want to let him process that. So our goal was to move on to Moses. We're going to delay Moses for maybe a week. If what has been going through my head is what God wants me to share next week, I've got to land on a few things first. But it's one of those things. God will come alongside of us and say, do this. I have my plans, Lord. No. Whose plan is the plan? So, just giving you a little warning that we may not start Moses next week. But he's still there. Because, here again, all of these things, all of these transitions teach us how to walk with God. Show us what God is capable of doing. And is he a different God today than he was for Joseph? Can he do the same through us that he did through Joseph? Don't limit him. Don't say, no, he can't. And don't put a quota on it. This week, you may be somebody that one person needs to hear from. Be ready to speak to the one. And don't be surprised when you speak to the multitudes. That's God. Let's pray. Father, we thank you. We thank you that you lead us and guide us and direct us. That you teach us. You give us the words in season. Help us, Lord, to hold on to you so tight that we will be ready instantly to proclaim the goodness of God